"Where did this come from?" she asked. I looked her in the eyes. "The job you all laughed at." The house was small but perfect. A cozy white brick cottage with navy shutters, a tidy yard, and a wide porch with a swing. It sat quietly under the shade of a maple tree that looked like it had watched over families for generations. The sold sign still stood in the grass. The key in my hand felt heavier than it should have, maybe because of everything it stood for. My mom, Irene, stood beside me, her mouth slightly open as she took it all in. She hadn't said much since we pulled into the driveway. I'd told her we were going to a surprise location for her 60th birthday. She thought maybe I was taking her to brunch or maybe a day spa. Definitely not this. "Leona," she said finally, her voice slow, uncertain. Where did this come from?" I turned to her, not with attitude, not with pride, just quiet truth. "It came from the job you all laughed at." I handed her the keys, pressing them gently into her hand. For a second, she didn't take them, just stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Her grip finally closed around the keys. Irene Carter, my mother, the woman who once told me I was wasting my time working at a coffee shop while other girls were getting real careers, now stood in front of a home she never dreamed she'd own, paid for in cash by her daughter's side hustle. Just 2 years ago, I remember sitting at the kitchen table, my apron still smelling like espresso beans, and listening to my Uncle Ray crack jokes about my job like it was a hobby for failed students. "Still making cappuccinos, Leo?" he'd said, grinning over a plate of meatloaf. "Well, at least you'll always have free coffee." Everyone had laughed. Even my dad chuckled behind his newspaper. My sister Haley smirked and raised an eyebrow. Back then, I didn't say anything. I didn't argue. I just excused myself and washed dishes so I wouldn't cry in front of them. But now, on this quiet street in front of this beautiful home, no one was laughing. My mom still hadn't moved. She looked between the keys in her hand and the porch in front of her, blinking like she was trying to wake up from a dream. "You bought this?" she asked. Like, "You bought it? With what money?" I turned to look at the house. My heart thudded in my chest, not from nerves, from the weight of every moment that had led here, every closing shift, every online tutorial I studied at 2 a.m., every product I'd packed and shipped by hand when orders started trickling in, every silent promise I'd made to myself when no one else believed in me. "With the money I made from Bloomskin," I said. "The skincare brand I started with coffee grounds, from the café job you thought was beneath me." She didn't respond, just looked at the porch again. "I wanted you to have something of your own," I added quietly. "Something peaceful, something yours." She opened her mouth, then closed it. I watched her face shift, confusion, disbelief, maybe pride, but too tangled to come out cleanly. I didn't expect an apology. That wasn't what this was about. This wasn't revenge. It was peace. It was closure. It was my way of saying, I turned the thing you mocked into something powerful, and now I'm giving part of that power back to you. A soft breeze moved through the trees, rustling the leaves. Mom finally took a step toward the porch, her fingers still wrapped around the keys. Behind her, Haley's car pulled up. Uncle Ray and Dad stepped out from the back seat, carrying party balloons and a cake box. They had no idea what they were about to walk into. I gave one last glance at the house before following my mom up the walkway. This was just the beginning of what they were going to learn today. Why the betrayal hurt. Leona's quiet sacrifices, love for her mom, and dreams everyone ignored. 2 years earlier, I was just trying to survive. I was in my second year of college at a community campus just outside town. I worked 4 days a week at Bean and Bloom, a quiet little cafe with vintage lamps and chipped wooden tables. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. The manager, Carly, gave me flexible hours. The regulars knew me by name. I found rhythm in it, grinding beans, steaming milk, listening to strangers talk about their day. It was the one space in my life that felt predictable. At home, though, everything felt heavy. My mom, Irene, was the kind of woman who believed in appearances. She ironed her sheets. She color-coded her closet. She didn't say "I love you" much, but she cooked my favorite rice pudding when I had exams. She cared, in her way. But she also had dreams for me. And none of those dreams included me standing behind a register in a green apron. "You're wasting your time," she told me one night as she stood at the stove. "You've got brains. Do something with them." I had just come home from a double shift. My back ached. I still had to write a paper. I tried not to let my frustration show. "I'm doing something," I said. "I'm paying my tuition. I'm building something." "You're making lattes," she replied without turning around. And that's when I realized she wasn't trying to hurt me, but she also wasn't seeing me. Not really. My dad, Greg, wasn't much better. He worked long hours in construction and believed hard work meant sweat, calluses, and overtime. Side hustles and online business ideas made him roll his eyes. "If it doesn't come with a W-2 and a boss," he said once at dinner, "it's not a job, it's a hobby." Then there was Haley, my older sister, the favorite, the finance grad with the glossy apartment, structured blazers, and a boss who called her a natural leader. She always seemed amused by me. "Leona's a creative," she'd say at family gatherings, like it was a polite insult. "She likes exploring things." She once came into the cafe while I was working. Didn't order anything, just dropped off some forms Mom had sent with her. Before leaving, she looked around, smirked, and said, "Smells like potential in here, just not sure whose." I laughed politely. I always did. But I went home that night and cried into my pillow. The worst part? I wasn't angry. I didn't feel resentment. I just felt invisible. They all thought they were helping me, nudging me toward something better, something more respectable. But what they didn't understand was that I had a vision. I'd been researching how to turn spent coffee grounds into exfoliants. I'd been learning about packaging, branding, fulfillment. Every free moment I wasn't at work, I was studying, not for school, but for my dream, a natural skincare line born from waste and transformation, like me. Still, no one took me seriously. Not when I stayed up late labeling jars in our cramped kitchen. Not when I turned down weekends out with friends to attend small business webinars. Not even when I got my first bulk order and stayed up all night filling it. They just saw a girl clinging to a part-time job like it was a lifeboat. But that part-time job gave me everything. Money for ingredients, motivation to build, and most of all, belief in myself when no one else believed in me. And yet every small success I had was met with a dismissive nod or a passive-aggressive joke. "You'll settle down one day," my dad said, "once you get tired of playing entrepreneur." That's when I stopped sharing things altogether. I learned to smile at the dinner table, nod at their advice, then go back to work in silence. I poured myself into the only space that didn't ask me to be anyone else, the business I was quietly building, one jar at a time. And every time they laughed, I just thought, one day they'll see. They didn't know it yet, but every insult was turning into the foundation of something far bigger than they could imagine. Leona's humiliation at the hands of her family, and how no one stood up for her. It was a Sunday evening, one of those forced family dinners where no one really wanted to be there. But tradition insisted. We gathered at my parents' house. Greg at the head of the table, Haley bragging about her new project at work, Mom refilling everyone's plates like it was a competition, and Uncle Ray dropping his usual jokes. I barely spoke. I'd just pulled a 6-hour shift at the cafe and was still in my work clothes. My apron hung loosely in my bag, and there was a light coffee stain on my sleeve I hadn't noticed until I sat down. "Long day?" Haley asked, smirking as she picked at her roasted chicken. "Yeah," I said cautiously. "Busy at the cafe." Uncle Ray leaned back in his chair, already grinning. "Still making foam art, huh?" The table chuckled. I forced a tight smile. It's not just coffee, I replied gently. I've been developing a product line, natural skincare. I use leftover coffee grounds from work. Oh, wow, Haley said, voice syrupy sweet. So you're doing crafts now? That's fun. Ray clapped his hands. Hear that, folks? We've got ourselves a little scientist. Watch out, Estee Lauder. Even my dad laughed at that one, shaking his head. You know we're just teasing, Leo. Were they? Because it didn't feel like teasing. I looked at my mom, hoping for something, maybe even a soft glance. She didn't meet my eyes. Just passed the bread basket to Haley and said, I still think you should consider applying for admin work somewhere. Steady income, benefits, and a cubicle. I said under my breath. What was that? Haley raised a brow. Nothing. I swallowed hard and lowered my gaze to my plate. The chicken suddenly tasted like cardboard. In that moment, I wasn't a woman with dreams. I wasn't the one who stayed up late watching tutorials, researching cosmetic regulations, managing a small but growing Etsy store. To them, I was just the girl who couldn't grow up. The disappointment in progress. I felt it deep in my bones. That loneliness that comes when even the people who raised you can't see past your current paycheck. They thought I was lazy. They thought I was avoiding real responsibility. But none of them knew how hard it was juggling rent, school, and a business from scratch. None of them asked. They just assumed. After dinner, as I helped clear the plates, I overheard Haley talking to Uncle Ray in the living room. She's sweet, she whispered. But honestly, I think she's scared of real life. It's easier for her to play barista than face rejection out there. I give it a year, Ray replied. She'll be back home asking for help. I gripped the plate in my hand a little too tightly. My knuckles went white. That night, back in my room, I opened my laptop and looked at the analytics on my Etsy shop. 10 new orders. My follower count had gone up by 23. Small wins, but they were mine. I opened my notebook, where I kept handwritten notes on marketing strategies, packaging ideas, and upcoming product launches. In big capital letters, I wrote across the next blank page, "They laugh now, but they'll see." Tears welled in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall, because I wasn't going to be their joke forever. I didn't need applause. I needed focus. And maybe someday, when I stood on my own 2 feet with something real in my hands, they'd realize what I'd been building all along. A spark of belief is quickly crushed, showing Leona just how alone she really is. A few weeks after that family dinner, I got an email that nearly made me drop my phone. Subject: Panel Invite, Student Entrepreneur Spotlight. It was from the college's business program. They were hosting a small entrepreneurship event and wanted me to join as a guest panelist. They'd seen my skincare line growing online and wanted me to speak about launching a startup with limited resources. I reread the email 3 times, heart thudding. I wasn't even a business major. Someone had noticed my work anyway. That meant something. For the first time in months, I felt visible. That night, I stayed up polishing my pitch and outlining talking points. I practiced in the mirror, imagining what it would feel like to be taken seriously. Not just as someone's little sister or the girl with the side hustle, but as a founder, a creator, a businesswoman. The event wasn't fancy. Just a classroom turned into a makeshift auditorium, maybe 30 students and a couple of faculty members. But when I spoke, people nodded. They leaned in. They asked smart questions. Afterward, a girl came up to me, her voice shaking. "I've been wanting to start a candle business for a year, but I was scared. Hearing your story made me feel like maybe I can." I walked home that evening glowing. I wasn't imagining my progress. It was real. It mattered. For the first time in a long time, I let myself hope my family might be proud too. That weekend, I printed out a few slides from my presentation, along with mock-up packaging designs for Bloom Skin. I even added a screenshot of one of my most viral product videos, 45K views and counting. When I handed the pages to my mom in the kitchen, she looked down briefly, then back up at me. "What is this?" "I spoke on a panel," I said. About the business. I got invited by the college. These are just some samples of what I showed. Thought you might want to see. She flipped through a couple of pages, barely looking. Then she smiled, but not the kind of smile I'd hoped for. It was tight, polite. "That's nice, honey," she said. "But are you still planning to apply for that admin assistant job at City Finance? You know they have benefits." My heart sank. I just thought it was a big deal to be invited. I wanted you to be proud. "I am," she said, clearly uncomfortable. "It's just, you're not going to be 25 forever. At some point, you'll need to think long term." I stared at her, stunned. This was my long-term plan. She didn't even ask how the panel went. I went to my room and slammed the door quietly behind me. On my desk was a box of freshly printed Bloomskin labels I had designed myself. Underneath it, a growing stack of fulfilled order receipts. I looked at them and tried to remind myself that my validation didn't need to come from her. But it still hurt. Later that night, I heard my parents talking outside my door. Greg's voice. "She's got big dreams, but that's not going to pay the bills. At some point, we're going to have to step in." Mom replied, "Let her dream. She'll land eventually." Land. Like I was floating in the clouds, lost, detached, delusional. I turned off the lights, laid down, and stared at the ceiling. They saw me as someone waiting to wake up, but I was wide awake, and they were the ones sleeping on me. When the family makes it clear who deserves investment and who doesn't, Leona is cut out of the picture completely. I don't know what I expected when I walked into the living room that morning, but it wasn't confetti. Haley was standing in the center of the room, practically glowing. My mom had just handed her a manila envelope with a bow taped on it. Dad stood nearby with coffee in hand, grinning like he'd just closed a business deal. Even Uncle Ray was there, sipping orange juice and grinning. I froze in the hallway, still in my pajamas, hair in a messy bun. "What's going on?" I asked. Haley turned to me, holding up the envelope. "Mom and Dad just gave me 15 grand for my condo down payment." I blinked. "Wait, what?" Mom turned, already defensive. "She's buying in a good area. It's a smart investment." "That's amazing," I said, forcing a smile. "I didn't know you were giving her that kind of support." Haley shrugged. "Well, some of us have a track record." That stung. I looked at my mom. "So you helped her with a down payment, but you told me last month you didn't have anything to spare when I needed help with rent." Dad jumped in. "It's different, Leona." "Different how?" "You're not stable yet," Mom said gently, like it was meant to be comforting. "This is Haley's first property. She's established." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So until I reach some arbitrary definition of stable, I don't count?" "It's not that," Mom replied. "We just want to make sure our money is going towards something certain." Certain. That word bounced around in my chest like a wrecking ball. I'd been paying for everything myself, tuition, food, business materials, while Haley had a job lined up through a family friend and still got gifted thousands. And I was the gamble? "I just wanted some help with rent," I said quietly. "I wasn't asking for a house. I was 2 weeks behind and afraid of losing my apartment." Mom's face hardened. "Leona, we can't just give handouts. You've chosen an unstable path." Dad nodded. "It's about being practical. That coffee thing won't last forever." And just like that, the truth was laid bare. They didn't see my dream as real. They didn't believe in what I was building. They saw me as a flake, a child, a risk. Even Grandma Nora, who had been quiet this whole time, looked like she wanted to speak up. But she didn't. Just sipped her tea with a furrowed brow. I walked back to my room without another word, closed the door, and sat on the edge of my bed. I stared at the boxes of Bloomskin supplies stacked in the corner, jars, labels, wrapping paper, sealed orders waiting to be dropped off. They had no idea how many nights I'd gone without sleep filling those. They had no clue that just last week, I doubled my monthly revenue. That I was learning how to scale. that I was in talks with a local boutique to carry my line in store. To them, it was still a coffee thing. I picked up my phone, opened my camera, and recorded a video, just for myself. "I'm not going to forget this," I said, looking into the lens. "I'm going to remember every word, every dismissal, every time they acted like I was invisible. And one day, when I sign that check for something big, something real, I'm going to look back on this moment and know exactly why I made it." Then I set the phone down and opened my laptop. Orders to fulfill, labels to print, ads to test. I wasn't looking for revenge. I was building my own future. They wouldn't fund it? Fine. I'd fund it myself. Leona withdraws, abandoned by her family's faith, but begins the quiet transformation they never see coming. After the down payment scene, something inside me shut off. I didn't slam doors. I didn't scream. I didn't cry where they could see. But I stopped trying. I stopped trying to win their approval, stopped trying to prove myself in casual conversation. I smiled at the dinner table, nodded at their advice, and left the room as soon as I could. If they noticed the shift, they didn't say anything. I moved through the house like wallpaper, quiet, flat, barely acknowledged. That summer, I stopped asking for help entirely. Rent was always late. I picked up every shift I could at Bean & Bloom, even covered for coworkers on weekends just to stack an extra 100 here or there. My feet ached constantly. I had blisters no one saw. Some nights, I fell asleep fully dressed, face against my laptop keyboard, while watching yet another tutorial on SEO, email marketing, or product photography. I learned everything myself, and I told no one. Mom would occasionally poke her head into my room and ask why I didn't come down to watch the latest crime series with her and Haley. I'd shrug. "Busy?" She never pressed. I felt like I was watching my family from behind a glass wall. I could see them clearly, but they couldn't hear me knocking. It was worse with Haley. Now that she had real estate goals, as she called them, she became smugger than ever. She once posted an Instagram story with a filter showing off her keys, captioned, "Invest in yourself, not in coffee shops." She didn't tag me, but I knew. Uncle Ray, during a rare Sunday visit, turned to me and asked, "So, when are you finally giving up this cafe artist gig and doing something useful?" I didn't even answer, just walked away mid-conversation. For a while, that silence was lonely, but over time, it became fuel. Isolation gave me tunnel vision. I wasn't distracted by trying to make anyone proud anymore. I stopped measuring success by their approval and started tracking numbers, monthly orders, 5-star reviews, returning customers. And the reviews, they got me through. People raved about my scrubs, how they softened their skin, how they smelled like real ingredients, not chemicals. Some even shared before and after photos. They didn't care where I came from. They just liked what I made. That was the purest validation I'd ever had. But none of that changed the weight I carried at home, like the time I got sick and still pulled an overnight shift to fulfill orders. Feverish, aching, but pushing through. I came downstairs for water, face pale, body trembling. My mom glanced at me and said, "Are you sure this little side project isn't burning you out?" That's the danger with hobbies. I said nothing. There were nights I cried in the shower just to muffle the sound. I didn't want anyone hearing me break. I wasn't just building a brand. I was trying to survive being invisible. I became my own cheerleader. I'd wake up and write sticky notes on my bathroom mirror. "They don't need to believe in you. You do. You are not what they think. Keep going, quietly, fiercely." One day I passed by the kitchen and overheard Haley say to Mom, "Honestly, I think she's going through something. But I guess everyone finds their way, eventually." They didn't know I was already finding it, and that someday they'd realize they had been watching my breakthrough all along. They just didn't recognize what it looked like. Leona receives an unexpected moment of warmth from someone who had been quietly watching all along. It was a rainy Wednesday afternoon when she walked into Bean & Bloom. The cafe was nearly empty. Just one couple on a laptop in the corner and a teenager reading poetry near the window. I was on my second shift of the day, hair pulled into a low bun, apron damp from wiping the counters. Then I saw her, Grandma Nora, my dad's mother, walking in with her tiny floral umbrella and that always perfect silver hair. She rarely visited unannounced. She waved slightly, smiled like she always did, like she knew something you didn't. "Hey, Grandma," I said, surprised. "You okay?" "Just wanted to see your little kingdom," she said, eyes roaming the cafe slowly. "You've been working here a long time. I figured it was time I came to you." I brewed her tea, Earl Grey with a splash of oat milk, just how she liked it, and brought it to the corner table she chose near the bookshelf. For a few minutes we just sat quietly. Then she looked at me and said, "You know, I never told you this, but your grandpa ran his first business out of a barn behind his mom's house, selling parts from old tractors." Everybody laughed, until he started hiring the same people who used to mock him. I blinked. "I didn't know that." She nodded, sipping her tea. "Most people don't, but I remember. I remember the late nights, the grease under his nails, the way folks rolled their eyes at him like he was just tinkering. He used to say, 'They don't need to get it, I do.'" I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until I let it out. She leaned forward and pulled something out of her purse. An envelope. No bow, no card. Just my name written in her soft handwriting. I opened it slowly. Inside was a folded piece of paper and a check. The paper read, "For supplies, for dreams, for the things they can't see yet." I looked at the amount. $500. My throat tightened. "Grandma, I can't take this." "You can," she said, "and you will." She reached across the table, her hand soft and cold. "They see a barista. I see a builder. Don't let their blindness make you question your vision." Something cracked open in me then, all the walls I'd built to keep from getting hurt. She walked right through them like they were glass. "I thought no one believed in me," I whispered. "Well," she said with a sly grin, "I've always been quiet. Doesn't mean I haven't been watching." I sat with her a little longer, not saying much, just breathing, absorbing. For the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. When she finally stood up to leave, she patted my hand and said, "Don't waste your time trying to get applause from people who don't even know what stage you're on. Just keep building." That night, I bought new labels, upgraded my shipping boxes, reinvested every cent with precision. But more than anything, I kept the note. It lived inside my planner, between pages of analytics and product sketches. Whenever I doubted myself or missed hearing a kind voice, I'd pull it out and read it again. For supplies, for dreams, for the things they can't see yet. She didn't just give me money. She gave me permission to believe louder. While everyone is looking the other way, Leona quietly builds something powerful. By the time the leaves began to turn, so had something inside me. Gone were the scattered sticky notes and chaotic spreadsheets. I had a system now. I wasn't just winging it. I had SKUs, inventory logs, shipping stations. My tiny bedroom had transformed into a mini fulfillment center, complete with plastic bins for each product line and shelving from the clearance aisle at Target. I had renamed the brand from just Bloom Skin to Bloom Skin Naturals, filed for an LLC, and registered a domain. It felt small and monumental all at once. Every morning before work, I fulfilled orders from overnight. During my breaks at Bean & Bloom, I answered customer emails and scheduled social posts. Late at night, I researched better packaging vendors and watched small business TikToks on repeat, not for entertainment, but to decode what worked. The order count was climbing. One day, I shipped 32 packages. 32. It was the same week Haley bragged about her promotion at dinner. "I'll be managing a 5-person team," she said. "Mom, Dad, I told you that business degree would pay off." Everyone clapped. I stayed quiet, buttering my roll. They didn't know I'd doubled my revenue that month. They didn't know a micro-influencer with 20K followers had posted an unboxing video of my coffee clay cleanser, and the views passed 100K in 48 hours. They didn't know I'd received a message from a boutique in Portland asking if they could stock my line. And I didn't tell them. Not because I was bitter, because I didn't need to anymore. The silence had become power. That week, I bought a whiteboard, drew up quarterly goals, designed a new product, a whipped exfoliating mousse with caffeine and calendula. I called it Morning Revival, wrote copy for the product page like my life depended on it. And the reviews? They started to pile in. Helped my eczema, smells heavenly. Can't believe this is handmade. My skin feels like silk. Just ordered 2 more jars. I found this brand by accident and now I'm obsessed. It wasn't just a hobby anymore. It was a growing business. Still at home, nothing changed. Mom would knock on my door and ask, "Any luck on those admin job applications?" I'd smile and say, "Still looking." Dad occasionally asked if I'd considered getting certified in something stable. Haley kept sending me listings for shared apartments. "You'll need roommates with your income." They truly had no idea. And that was okay, because the more they stayed blind, the harder I worked. And every missed dinner, every skipped birthday text, every sideways glance only sharpened my focus. One night, while packing orders at 2 a.m., I paused. It hit me. This was the very thing they mocked, the job that supposedly meant nothing. The place I made $11 an hour was the same place that had introduced me to the power of ingredients, community, and product design. Being in bloom wasn't a distraction. It was my incubator. I stared at the stack of labeled packages ready to be mailed. They were beautiful. Clean, minimalist, matte black boxes tied with natural twine. Inside each one was a sample card with the phrase I had typed and printed myself. Growth starts in small places. It felt like the story of my life. By spring, I'd saved enough to look at bigger things. I wasn't just thinking in jars and orders anymore. I started looking at wholesale pricing, studio spaces, maybe even property. And one night, on a whim, I searched homes for sale in state under $200,000. I didn't know it yet, but that search would lead to the day my mother would hold keys in her hand and ask me, stunned, "Where did this come from?" And I'd get to say the words I'd rehearsed 1,000 times in my mind. "From the job you laughed at." But first, I had one more thing to do. I had to let them stay blind a little longer. Because when the reveal came, I wanted them to feel every inch of it. As Leona's business quietly grows, her family becomes increasingly oblivious, still stuck in the version of her they think they know. The more I built, the less they noticed. By then, Bloomskin Naturals had tripled its monthly orders. I'd hired a part-time college student, Hannah, to help with fulfillment 2 days a week. She worked out of my friend Rachel's basement, which I rented for cheap and turned into a packing studio. Every dollar was reinvested into bulk materials, updated branding, better labels, custom jars, eco-friendly shipping. It was messy, exhilarating, exhausting, and completely mine. But back home, nothing had changed. My parents still asked the same tired questions. "You're still working at the coffee shop, right?" Dad said over dinner one evening, half distracted by the sports channel. "I haven't seen you apply for that receptionist job," Mom added. "They're hiring again." I spooned mashed potatoes onto my plate and nodded, like always. "Still figuring things out," I said. I wasn't lying. I was just letting them stay in the past. Meanwhile, Haley was living in a high-rise with floor-to-ceiling windows and a roommate who only drank matcha. She updated her LinkedIn religiously, posted about women in leadership, and loved to send our family group chat links to productivity articles she'd never read. One Sunday, she hosted brunch and invited us all. I almost skipped, but Grandma Nora nudged me. "You don't have to shrink," she said. "Just don't volunteer your story. Let it ripen." So I went. Haley gave me the tour like she was on HGTV. Marble counters, gold fixtures. "Work hard, reward yourself," she said, sipping from her $12 mimosa. At one point, She turned to me in front of everyone and said, "Leona, you'd love it here. Maybe when you get a steady job, you could think about moving out of Mom's, too." My face stayed still. The words hit like a slap, but I didn't let it show. I smiled. "Maybe someday." She meant well, I knew that, but her words weren't innocent. She still saw me as someone lagging behind, as the one who didn't figure life out fast enough, as the underachiever. What she didn't know was that I'd bought out my first production run that month. I had 3 boutiques carrying my line. I had a tax advisor now, a QuickBooks subscription. My business wasn't just a startup anymore, it was generating more income than her finance job. But I kept it quiet, because I had something better than praise. I had proof. And soon, I'd have presentation. Back home, I started working on the plan. Mom's birthday was coming up, her 60th. She'd always talked about wanting a little house of her own, something cozy, away from city noise. A porch, a garden. Over the years, it became one of those dreams she stopped mentioning out loud. Maybe because she never thought it would happen. Maybe because she'd resigned herself to renting forever. But I hadn't forgotten. So, late at night, while she slept down the hall, I stayed up scrolling real estate listings. Most were out of range. But then I found it. A 1-story white brick house with navy shutters and a wraparound porch. 2 bedrooms, new roof, quiet street. The listing said, "Motivated seller." I ran the numbers. It was just within reach, if I cleaned out every account. It scared me, but I'd built everything from scratch. I could build again. I scheduled a tour, wrote a cashier's check, and without telling a soul, I signed the closing paperwork on a cloudy Tuesday morning. The same day, back at dinner, Dad asked me if I wanted help printing more resumes. Uncle Ray had texted me that morning. "Hey kid, still pulling espresso? I've got a cousin in logistics who could probably throw you a desk job. No pressure." I never answered, because in 4 days, I'd hand my mom a velvet box with house keys inside, and I wanted the look on their faces to be untouched by warning. They'd think I was still small, still figuring it out, still the one who needed rescuing, but I was the one about to give them something they'd never expect. Their blindness had become my camouflage, and I had never been clearer. Leona orchestrates a turning point, her mom's birthday celebration, where everything will finally be seen for what it is. I started planning the moment I signed the papers. Mom's 60th was just 2 weeks away. She thought we'd do what we always did, dinner at home, maybe a store-bought cake, photos in the living room with our eyes half shut, and no one agreeing on what filter to use. But this time, I wanted different. I wanted a moment she'd never forget, not because of balloons or cake, but because of the truth. I texted her one afternoon while she was out running errands. Me. "Don't plan anything for your birthday. I have something special in mind." Mom. "Oh, like a day trip?" Me. "Something better. Just trust me." She sent a heart emoji. I could picture her smiling, imagining brunch or a massage, maybe a nice lunch downtown. She had no idea she was about to be handed the keys to her own house. The next few days were a blur. I visited the property again to finalize everything. Utilities, cleaning, getting the lawn trimmed. The place didn't need much, just warmth, just presence. I brought a framed photo of our family and placed it on the living room mantel. I bought her favorite candle, jasmine and clove, and set it on the kitchen counter. I even ordered a small white cake from her favorite bakery, the one she used to pass on the way to work, but never splurged on. Every detail mattered, because this wasn't just a gift, it was a statement. At the same time, I planned the cover story. I sent a group text to the family. Leona. "I've planned something for Mom's birthday. Everyone be at 15 Crescent Hill at 4 p.m. next Saturday. Trust me. Just come dressed nice." Haley. "Crescent Hill? That's a nice neighborhood, LOL. What's over there?" Uncle Ray. "We getting spa vouchers or what?" Dad. "You sure you don't need help organizing? Might be a bit much for one person." I ignored most of it. What mattered was the address. What they didn't know was that the house wasn't rented. It wasn't borrowed. It wasn't on loan from a friend. It belonged to me, paid in full, under Bloomskin Naturals, LLC. The woman they'd written off as a dreamer had quietly become the only one in the family to buy a house outright. I printed the deed and tucked it into a velvet box, along with the keys. It sat in my top drawer for 4 days. Every night before bed, I checked to make sure it was still there. Every morning, I opened it once, just to feel the weight of what was coming. Mom, meanwhile, had no idea. She'd been unusually cheerful all week. "It's just a number," she said about turning 60. "I just want to spend the day with my kids. No fuss." But part of her did want to be celebrated. I knew that. All her life she'd put others first, skipped vacations, took the last slice only when offered, quietly absorbed disappointment. She deserved a win, even if she didn't expect one, especially from me. The night before the big day, I couldn't sleep. I stayed up tweaking the speech I planned to say, practiced handing her the box, imagined the look on her face, imagined the silence that would fall across the room when everyone realized the truth. When they realized the person they had underestimated was the same person giving the greatest gift they'd ever received. Not for applause, not for revenge, but for peace. And maybe, just maybe, to remind them that love isn't always loud, but it's always working. By morning, the sky was clear. I got dressed, checked the house one last time, and made sure everything was perfect. At 3:57 p.m., I stood by the front door of 15 Crescent Hill, holding the box, waiting for my mother. The woman who had doubted me. The woman I still loved more than she'd ever know. She didn't realize it yet, but her daughter was about to rewrite everything they thought they knew. Leona finally reveals what she's built. The truth lands like thunder in a house that now belongs to her mother. At exactly 4:03 p.m., my mom's car turned into the driveway of 15 Crescent Hill. She stepped out, smoothing her blouse, a little confused. "Is this it?" she asked, looking at the house. "Yep," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. I could feel my heart pounding, not from nerves, but from everything this moment represented. Every late night, every bruise on my palms from carrying shipping boxes, every time they told me, "Is that all you can do?" Mom looked at the house again, then back at me. "It's beautiful. Whose is it?" Instead of answering, I just smiled. "Come inside." She walked slowly up the path, the breeze catching her hair, her heels crunching on the gravel. I held the door open and followed her in. The scent of jasmine and clove drifted through the air. Sunlight streamed across the hardwood floors. She froze when she saw the photo on the mantel, us from 5 years ago at a beach picnic. She turned, eyebrows lifted. "Why is that here?" "Because this is yours," I said softly. Her face scrunched in confusion. "What do you mean?" I reached into my bag and pulled out the velvet box. She stared at it like it might bite her. "What is that?" "Open it." Her hands were shaking as she lifted the lid. Inside were 2 silver keys and a folded paper. The deed. Her name was written neatly across the top. I watched her lips move as she read the words. "Leona," she whispered, her voice cracking. "This house is yours," I said. "Paid in full. No mortgage, no strings. Just yours." Tears welled instantly in her eyes. "What? How? Who gave this to you?" I smiled. "I did." She sat down on the edge of the couch, stunned. "With what money?" I took a breath, looked her right in the eyes, and said it. "With the job you all laughed at." She blinked, processing. "Your skincare business?" I nodded. "The one I started with coffee grounds from Bean and Bloom. The one you said was a pipe dream. The one nobody believed in." Her eyes darted around the room as if seeing everything for the first time. The candle, the cushions, the soft lighting, the way everything had been prepared with love. "I don't understand," she said softly. You did this alone? Every late night? Every skipped family dinner? Every dollar I saved instead of spending? This is what it was for. Before she could respond, the front door opened and in came Haley, followed by Dad, Uncle Ray, and Grandma Nora. Haley was already speaking. Nice rental, Leo. You decorated it just for her? Uncle Ray added, Wow, never seen you throw something this fancy. Then they all noticed the box in Mom's lap, the keys, the silence on her face. Dad asked, What's going on? She bought this house, Mom whispered, almost to herself. It's mine. She gave it to me. They all stopped cold. Haley blinked. Wait, you bought this? With cash, I said simply. No loans, no co-signers, no help, just the business I started while everyone was telling me to get a real job. Uncle Ray scoffed, half laughing like he was waiting for the punchline. You serious? She is, Grandma Nora said, stepping in. She's more serious than any of you ever were about her. For a moment, no one moved. Then Haley said, too softly, How? And that's when I realized the moment had landed. The woman they'd dismissed, mocked, overlooked, had just outpaced them all. Not with noise, not with showmanship, but with proof, with presence, with something real they couldn't ignore. Mom finally looked up at me, tears streaking her cheeks. Why didn't you tell us? Because I didn't need you to clap, I replied. I just needed to build. And I did. Shock floods the room. The power dynamic shifts, and the people who once mocked Leona begin to understand exactly what they missed. The silence in the living room stretched. Everyone stood still, as if the walls had absorbed the weight of what just happened. My mom was still holding the velvet box like it might vanish if she blinked too fast. The keys lay in her lap. Her fingers trembled over them. Uncle Ray was the first to speak. Well, he said, trying to clear his throat. Guess that little coffee job wasn't so little after all. He chuckled, but it didn't land. No one laughed, not even him. Haley took a step forward. You paid cash? For a house? Yes, I said plainly. She tilted her head like she was still trying to solve a math problem. How? Like, where did you get the kind of money to do that? With the brand I built, I said. The one none of you ever asked about, Bloomskin Naturals. She blinked. I thought that was just a TikTok thing. It started there. It didn't stay there. Dad stood in the back of the room, arms folded, jaw tight. You've been living under our roof this whole time like you were broke. I wasn't broke, I said. I was building, quietly, because every time I tried to talk about it, someone told me to get serious. He opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. My mom finally stood, slowly. Her voice was thin, unsure. All this time, I thought you were just clinging to something small, something unrealistic. I know, I said gently. Her eyes filled again. I'm sorry. For a second, I said nothing. Because it wasn't just about the apology. It was about the years of not being seen, of working in silence while they all traded jokes at my expense, of learning how to believe in myself without any help from the people who were supposed to offer it freely. But I also knew something else. I hadn't built this to shame them. I built it to survive them. I didn't need an apology, I said. I just needed space to try, and you never gave it. Uncle Ray gave a low whistle, like he was still catching up. Guess the joke's on us, huh? Grandma Nora, quiet until now, walked up beside me. No, she said, eyes sharp. There's no joke. There never was. You just never listened. Haley's gaze dropped to the floor. She wasn't smirking anymore, just silent. And that said more than anything she could have replied. The shift was complete. I wasn't the punchline anymore. I was the one holding the room together. They felt it. I saw it on their faces the moment they realized they'd misjudged not just my ambition, but my capacity. Dad finally asked, "So what now?" I looked at him. "Now? I move out. You don't need to worry about me anymore. I'll be funding my own life. And now, part of Mom's too." I turned to her. "This house is in your name. There's no rent, no debt, just you, finally getting something you always deserved." She choked out a breath. "I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just live in it." For a long time, no one moved. No one dared to make another joke. Because the roles had flipped, and they knew it. I wasn't angry, I wasn't triumphant. I was just done explaining myself. They could keep their doubt. I had keys. Leona doesn't gloat. She simply breathes. For the first time, her success speaks for itself, and she finally feels whole without needing anyone's approval. That evening, long after the last guest had left, the sun dipped behind the rows of trees lining Crescent Hill. The soft golden light spilled across the porch as I sat in one of the old rocking chairs the previous owner had left behind. My mom was inside, wandering the house, still in a haze of disbelief. I'd caught her more than once opening a cabinet and closing it again, just to be sure it was real. I could hear her voice faintly. She was on the phone with her sister, describing every corner of the house like it was a museum piece. And I just sat there, silent, breathing in the stillness. No orders to fill, no questions to answer, no comments to defend myself against. Just peace. The kind of peace that comes when you stop trying to prove yourself to people who never tried to understand you. The kind that says, "I'm enough. I've always been enough." For years, I'd carried around their voices like weights in my chest. "Is that all you can do? When are you going to get serious? You're not thinking long term." But tonight, those voices felt quiet. Not because I'd silenced them with revenge, but because I no longer needed their validation. I looked at the house, the porch, the flicker of light in the living room where my mother now stood, cradling a life she never thought she'd have. This was my win. Not the money, not the house, not the stunned looks on their faces. The win was knowing that I'd done it my way. With nothing but grit, a bag of coffee grounds, and a vision no one else could see. I thought back to that moment 2 years ago, sitting on my bedroom floor with my laptop, trying to design a label that didn't look cheap. I remembered the 3 a.m. breakdowns, the anxiety of waiting for shipping delays, the fear of returns. I remembered the way my fingers ached from packing dozens of jars, how I used to fall asleep next to my printer just so I wouldn't miss a label run. And through all of it, I never quit. Because somewhere deep down, I believed this was leading somewhere. I just didn't know it would feel this quiet, this full. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. I turned to see Mom stepping onto the porch, barefoot, holding 2 mugs of tea. She sat beside me and handed me one. "I don't even know how to thank you," she said softly, not looking at me. "You don't have to," I replied. She rocked gently in the chair. "I think I spent too long trying to mold you into what I thought was safe." "I know." She paused. "You didn't need me to believe in you, did you?" I sipped my tea. It would have helped. But no, I didn't. Silence again. Not heavy, just real. Then she said something I never expected to hear. "I'm proud of you, Leona. I mean it. Not just for this house, but for seeing something when none of us did. For sticking with it. That takes strength I don't think I ever had." I turned to her. "That strength came from surviving your doubt." She nodded slowly, taking that in. "I'm sorry it had to." I didn't respond. Not out of bitterness. There was nothing left to argue about. The scoreboard was reset. From now on, I wouldn't be the girl they underestimated. I would be the woman who gave her mom a home, not to prove a point, but to rewrite what legacy meant. I leaned back in the chair, let the night settle around us, and exhaled. I didn't need applause. I had my peace, and I wasn't giving it up for anything. A quiet reconnection, where regret meets grace, and Leona begins to release the weight of the past without needing to rewrite it. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of the screen door creaking open. I was staying the night on an air mattress in the guest room just to help Mom get settled. The house still smelled like new paint and candles. As I walked into the kitchen, I found her already dressed, standing by the stove, flipping pancakes. "I thought you might sleep in," she said without turning around. I smiled faintly. "Old habits, early mornings." She glanced over her shoulder. "So that's what kept you so disciplined." I poured myself coffee and leaned against the counter. She moved slower than usual, more deliberate, like everything around her needed to be touched and appreciated. The home was still foreign to her, like a miracle she wasn't sure she was allowed to accept. After a few quiet minutes, she finally said, "I didn't just doubt you because of fear. I doubted you because I didn't know how to dream for myself. So when you started dreaming big, I thought it would break you." Her voice cracked at the last word. "I was wrong." I sipped my coffee. "It's okay." "It's not," she said. "You needed support. You needed a cheerleader. And I was too focused on keeping you safe instead of letting you grow." Her back was still to me, but I saw her shoulders rise and fall with a deep breath. "When you were little," she continued, "I always imagined giving you a better life than mine. But I thought that meant steering you towards something secure. I didn't understand that security could come from belief, from letting you try, even if it scared me." She turned to face me, eyes glassy. "I missed so much, didn't I?" I nodded. "Yeah, you did." Her lips trembled. "Is there a way I can start making that right?" I didn't need some grand gesture. I didn't need a list of things to fix. But I also wasn't going to dismiss the years I spent building in her shadow. "You just did," I said. "You saw me." She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. The hug wasn't tight. It was tender, like an apology in motion. "I'm proud of you," she whispered again. "I know," I whispered back. We stood like that for a moment, mother and daughter in the kitchen of a house neither of us had expected, but both of us had earned in different ways. And as the light streamed in through the window, catching the little gold key still sitting on the kitchen island, I realized something. I didn't need them to rewrite the past. I just needed to stop letting it define me. Later that day, Grandma Nora called. She didn't say "I told you so." She didn't need to. She just asked how the house felt. "Like an ending," I said. She chuckled. "No, sweetheart. Like a beginning." Leona walks forward, not for applause, not for revenge, but in full control of her life, her voice, and her future. 2 weeks later, I walked back into Bean and Bloom, the same cafe where it had all started. The bell above the door chimed just like it used to. The scent of freshly ground espresso beans hit me instantly, flooding me with memories. Early shifts before class, bruised fingers from dish trays, the little notepad I used to carry in my apron pocket, filled with skincare ingredient ideas I never showed anyone. The place hadn't changed much, still warm, still cluttered in a cozy way. The potted fern near the pastry case was drooping a little. The chalkboard menu had new seasonal specials. But the heart of the place? The same. Carly, my old manager, looked up from behind the counter. Her eyes widened. "Leona?" She smiled. "Back for old time's sake?" "Something like that," I said, smiling. She poured me a coffee without even asking. Hazelnut, oat milk, just the way I liked it. As she slid the cup across the counter, I pulled out a small envelope from my tote and handed it to her. "What's this?" she asked. "A grant application," I said. "From Bloomskin Naturals. I'm offering 3 microgrants this year to support young women launching product-based businesses." Carly blinked. "You're serious?" "Very," I said. And I want your niece to be one of the first to apply. She told me last year she wanted to start a natural tea brand, remember? She covered her mouth. Leona, that's incredible. I nodded. She just needs a little belief. I know how far that can go. Before I left, I took one last look around the cafe. I didn't feel resentment. I didn't feel embarrassment. I felt gratitude. This place gave me more than a paycheck. It gave me my start. As I stepped back outside into the warm breeze, my phone buzzed. A text from Haley. Haley. Hey, I've been thinking. Would love to grab coffee sometime. I have some ideas I want to run by you. And maybe some things I should have said a long time ago. I stared at the message for a moment. I wasn't angry anymore, but I wasn't in a rush either. Me. Maybe soon. I tucked the phone away and walked down the sidewalk, past the bakery, past the bookstore, past the part of town where everyone once saw me as someone figuring it out. I knew better now. I wasn't figuring it out. I'd figured it out. My success didn't come wrapped in applause or validation. It came from grit, grace, and the quiet decision to keep going when no one was watching. And now they were all watching, not because I shouted, but because I arrived, on my own terms, with my own name, with no one's permission.